Hey guys, welcome into the 8th, I'm pretty sure it's the 8th and final episode of this live draw along session. So far we've spent approximately 7 hours completing this one. Hopefully, like I said, this is going to be the last hour we're going to spend on it. To be honest, this is probably going to be the last video anyway. Even if this one ends up taking a little bit over an hour, we'll probably just all include it in this same video. So this one might go a little bit over the hour. However, we need to get it finished. I don't really think people are going to want to watch much longer. Anyway, so we've still got quite a bit left to do. So we've got to work on this nose, we've got to work on the eye, we've got to work on sort of generally the highlights anyway. So there's some areas that aren't quite bright enough, for example just up here on the nose and sort of down onto this cheek. So we'll need to work on all of that. But what we're going to start with is this nose. Now for this nose, the technique that I said we're going to use is stippling. That's basically using a lot of really small dots to build up that texture. A lot of people use cross hatching. You can do either or, it doesn't really matter. If you want to use cross hatching or hatching for this area, then that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to use stippling. It's just something I'm a bit more comfortable with. So all I'm doing is I've got my 9 round liner in there actually, so I'm probably going to look to change that. I'll change that to this one. So this one is a 7, and all I'm doing is just small dots just to build up the texture. Because it's such a small area, I find using stippling works quite well. So all we're doing is sort of working out where the highlights are going to be, where the midtones and where the shadows are going to be. And I find the stippling method, especially for the nose, gives a nice nosy texture, if that makes sense. And there's not an awful lot of detail in this nose. On the reference photo it's quite blurred out. So we're sort of just having to go off lights and darks really. So all we're doing is just putting a nice even layer of stipples over of these small dots to start. Now you can experiment with different types of round liner needles for this. They'll all create slightly different textures, whether that's the single round liner needle that'll create some nice fine points, or like I say, this one that's going to create some thicker points. And because there's sort of like 7 needles on the end of this, you're in essence going to get a thicker dot when you put it down. So that in some cases works really well for certain things. In others, you might want to go for a smaller needle. And the more dots you layer, the brighter it's going to be. The lighter you are, the darker it's going to be. There's no real secret to this method. There's nothing I'm doing that's particularly special. All I'm doing is following my line art that I've ended up transferring and just trying to get the lights in the right place and the darks in the right place. The only tip I can really give you is I've found it works better, instead of sort of going directly down at sort of like a 90-degree angle to the board, if you angle it exactly like you would your X-Acto knife or your pen, and then sort of go in at a slight angle, it gives you dots a lot easier than sort of just doing that. You sort of then pushing the ink off. Again, there's a lot of different tools that you can use for this one. You can use your X-Acto knife. I tend to use that more when it comes to adding the highlighted areas. With stippling, I don't tend to use that sort of all the way through. I know a few other people use the fiberglass brushes for stippling. Again, it's not something that I really use. Mainly I don't really get along with the fiberglass brush very well. I'm not really sure why, it's just not something that I've ever really used. I might give it a go in the future, but for now I'm quite happy with sort of the techniques that I use with the tattoo needles. But you know, if you like it, give it a go, see if it works. And let me know as well, because you know, just because I do it this way doesn't mean this is the only way to do it. If you found a different way that works well, then let me know and I'll give it a try. The only problem with stippling is it really tires out your hand. So even just doing short session like this just on the nose, it really makes your hand quite tired. Probably just because I'm gripping it too tightly or pushing down too hard. Now I've got that sort of even layer of stippling on it, I'm just going to work on where these highlights are. So I'm just going to re-go over the highlighted areas, push a little bit harder. If that doesn't give me the highlight that I want, then like I say, I'll go in with my X-Acto knife, which to be honest, judging by how it's going, I'll probably need to. I mean, there's not really an awful lot to say when I'm doing this area. It is just a case of building up those dots in the right area. Like I say, I'm not really doing anything in particular that I can give you many tips about. It is just a case, like I say, of keeping an eye on your reference photo, trying to get them in the right place, trying to slowly build up the texture. The same sort of rules apply. You know, we put down this light layer, this fainted layer of stipples instead of first strokes, because what we want to do is work out and plot where those light areas are going to be, the dark areas are going to be, exactly like you would with laying down those first strokes. And as you build up those layers, they get brighter. I tried just using my old, because I'm always experimenting, using my old Magnum tattoo needle, see if that gives me any different marks. Instead of doing dots now, I'm just doing tiny little, almost squiggles. Is sort of the best way that I can describe it. They're not quite first strokes, they're just small marks. I'm just using that to try and get the brighter areas. Just tiny scratches. May have to take a break from doing the nose, move on to somewhere else, and then come back and rework on it again, just because sometimes when your hand starts to get tired you start rushing and you just need to take that break. So for now we'll leave that there. It's not fully finished, like I say, we'll come back in and add a little bit more in to that one. It seems like everything that we're going to work on in this part is going to be all sort of fuzzy and out of focus, unfortunately. So if you can remember how we worked on this area up here, we're just using the round liner tattoo needle, so this is the 9, and all we're doing is keeping our strokes quite light and quite close together. You don't have to be too light with this one, because as you can see on the reference photo, there's not an awful lot of detail, and we do go quite bright with this one in the end. So you're not necessarily controlling how much brightness you're putting down. I'm just going around the outline first, and then what I'll do is I'll sort of work off the inside, just making sure that I'm not, like I say, going into that nose area. There's not an awful lot of detail, like I say, so it's going to be hard for you to follow a direction of fur. You sort of just have to look at the outer edge and see which way that's kind of pointing. I'm constantly blowing off that residue of dust that's going to be on the board. Every time you scratch, it's going to leave a fine layer of India ink or the scratch board dust on the top, and what that can do is it can sort of mask how bright you've actually gone. So if you don't get rid of that, either by blowing it away or using like a mop brush or something just to mop it away, you can end up going over the same area trying to get it to go brighter, but it's not going to go brighter because it's got a layer of dust on top. And then only when you get rid of that layer of dust and blow it away do you realise that you've actually gone too bright. So I find it helps just to constantly get rid of that. And that's why I like working with tattoo needles quite a lot. Just the different variety of marks that you can get with them. You know, you can get quite precise marks with like the one round liner, just a single tattoo needle. But then you can also make your work look quite blurred out and get rid of quite a lot of the scratch board just by using one of these thicker round liner needles. And then, like I say, you've got the magnum needles, you've got flat needles. So the flat ones are basically similar to magnum, but they're just one layer as well. So they're quite cool. I've not really got along with them. I've used them a short time, but I didn't really find them too good for my technique. But if you know, I can imagine if you were doing portraits or something like that, they'd work really well. So it'd be good to just buy an assortment of different ones, try them out, see what techniques you like, see what ones you're going to use. That's what I did when I first started using them. So you can really sort of see this this muzzle coming together now with the sort of shape and things like that, now that we're getting this other side in. You want to be careful you leave this little tiny black area just blacked out for the mouth, or the top of the mouth, the bottom of the where the snout joins in. we're just going to continue the same technique that we've been using, just on this bit further down. And like I said, that's sort of all we're really going to do on this section. We're not going to work it too much. There's not, like I say, loads of detail in this area. Again, just using my trusty cloth just to stop me rubbing all the black dust onto the board. I know I repeat myself quite a lot, you know, if you've ended up, congratulations if you've ended up lasting this long and watching all 8 of these videos. But this is just in case, you know, someone's picking up, you know, one of the last ones without watching the other ones. That's why I tend to repeat myself, just in case anyone's missed anything. If you've missed anything in the other videos, you can pick them up again in these later ones. And all the videos I've done, they will be linked in the description down below. So just, I'd recommend, you know, unless there's something specific that you want to see on a certain part of the drawing, I'd recommend watching them all before sort of like just jumping into this one. But if you want to know sort of, you know, like specifically how to do the eye, then by all means just watch that one. If you want to know how I tackle a nose, then by all means just watch the nose one. Now in theory I probably should have tackled this area before I did this bottom row, just because what I'm ending up going to have to do is re-go over these first strokes just to overlap them over this area, because at the minute I'm having to merge it into this area and it's sort of going to cover up some of the first strokes that I've done. So I'll probably just have to re-go over that, so I've created a little bit more work for myself, but you know, in hindsight I would have done it differently, but it's not made too much of a difference to the drawing, so. I'm going to leave that like that just for now. Like I say, I'll come back and I'll probably finish it off. I just want to get some of these hairs in, just because they're annoying me. It's always quite difficult doing blurred out sections in Scratchboard, just because you've got to it's really hard to not put detail in, because everything you're doing is with basically lines really, so it's quite hard to make something look blurred out. It takes a lot longer than what you'd expect. So now what I think we're going to do, we're going to work on this sort of top area of the eye. Once we've done that, like I say, there's quite a lot of work we need to do with sort of bringing the highlights down, boosting up the highlights in a few different places, smoothing things out. So like I say, it's far from completion, so we've got quite a lot to do. So hopefully we can get that done. Like I say, we'll get it done in this video, but I just don't want it to be like a 3-hour long video. So like I say, this area is quite blurred out as well, so we're sort of just using the same technique that we've used on the areas that are blurred. So we're going to use that 9 round liner tattoo needle, and we're just going to slowly build up that lightness. So we're using quite short strokes for this one, just because the fur that's going to be sort of just underneath the eye on this off side is going to be quite short, so we don't want to give the impression that the fur is really long. So you're still just matching up the same sort of things that we've done on the rest of the drawing. So we've got this sort of strip of quite bright white going just around the top of the eye. So again, we're going to start that off by just doing sort of the same thing that we've done down below, but we'll put that first layer in and then we'll go on top with a brighter layer like we've done sort of down here. Again, it's quite hard to see where the fur direction is going on this part. It is quite, like I say, just blurred out, which isn't the most ideal, so we're sort of just estimating where the fur direction is going to be, which, you know, probably isn't the best thing to do. But to be honest, with the fur being this blurred out, hopefully you're not even going to be able to tell which way it's going on my drawing. Like I said, there's a lot of different ways you can do blurred out fur. You know, you don't just have to use tattoo needles, you can use fiberglass brushes, sandpaper, like some very, very fine grit sandpaper. You don't want it too coarse. And all of that can work quite well. It's just, this is the technique I've always used really, since I've been starting. And to be honest, it's worked well for me. I've got quite used to this technique, but like I said, just because I'm doing it this way doesn't mean that you guys have to as well. I'm only here to show you the techniques I use. And, you know, if you're new to scratchboard, or you know, you want to follow along, hopefully this gives you sort of all the information, tools, things like that you're going to need. Now we're just starting on blending these two areas together. So as you can see on the reference photo, there's a very subtle blend between the two. And then what we'll do, we'll try and boost up the highlight that's going around there. All we're going to do to boost this up, we're just going to push down, keep with the same tool, but we're just going to push down a little bit harder. And like I say, remembering to blow away that excess dust, because you don't want it to sort of hide what you're doing and give you a false impression of how dark it is or how bright it is. So just by blowing it away, I don't know if it's being picked up on camera, but I can see how much brighter it's gone just from doing that. So then once we've finished on this part of the eye, we're just going to go around and touch up everything, and then final thing we'll do is add those whiskers. I always leave the whiskers till the very end. You don't want to be messing around with details around whiskers. You know, it's best just to get them in as the last point. Like I say, there's not an awful lot to say when we're sort of working on an area like this. It is just a case of looking out for those light and dark areas, trying to make sure you're getting them in, just making sure that you're comparing one light area with another light area to make sure that you haven't gone too bright or you've not gone bright enough. And already I can see I probably need to go a bit brighter with this one, so I might need to go in with a different tattoo needle, or I'll try a little bit of just cross hatching. And all that does is just makes it a little bit brighter. Right. We'll just smooth it out a little bit more, and then we'll start to work on the actual pupil and iris. Again, there's not an awful lot of detail in them. So we're just going to work into this. I don't know if you can quite see it, it's just a very light shade of grey, and then where the highlight would be just at the top there. Like I say, not an awful lot going on in this one, not as much detail as what was in the other eye. And again, all we're going to do is just try and keep it nice and light, nice and blurred out as well. So luckily we've been using this tattoo needle for a little bit of time now, so it's started to go a bit blunt, which makes keeping the strokes nice and light and faded a bit easier. I might have to go over this with just some India ink just to redarken it, because it's quite hard to get. What I tend to do at this stage, I tend to stand back quite a lot, and it just allows you to see the picture as a whole. So sorry if my voice has gone a little bit distant or odd, just because I'm standing up now looking down at my work. The only other thing you can do is, like hold the work further away from you, but I don't want to keep taking it away and then putting it back for you guys. I'm just having a look to see if this area looks okay, where I need to go lighter. So there's, like I say, there's a fair few areas that I need to go brighter with. I need to finish off just inside this pupil, just inside the corner of this eye, sorry. And then we'll focus on brightening everywhere up. or the areas that need brightening anyway. So now that we've got sort of like all the main areas in, you know, we've got the nose, we've got this side of the face, we've got this cheek down here. Now this is all about refinement. So just trying to get those areas up to how you want them. I find this is one of the most important stages. You know, a lot of people will probably have already stopped by now just because they feel like, well, it looks pretty much complete, but it's this extra little part that you're putting in now, adjusting things. That's what's gonna, as well, you know, as well as things like layers and stuff like that, is what's gonna make your work look more realistic. So we're going to be dotting sort of all about the board on this one. Get rid of all my tools that I've sort of ended up building up. Now I can use my trusty cloth. So I think before we start going back into that eye, because that's a bit of a challenging area, I'm going to start on this nose and get this back up to where I wanted it to be. So all this area down the outside, that needs to be a bit brighter on the bridge of this nose. As you can see on the reference photo, this fur sort of hooks down onto the nose, and you don't want to leave that sort of this line that I've got in there. I don't want to leave that, because if you tend to have a black line sort of surrounding something like that, like we've got up here that I'm going to get rid of, it makes your work look a little bit cartoony, in my opinion anyway. Now, if you like that look, that's fine. But if you want to go for realism, I'll work on the inside of that nose in just a minute. I just want to work on this line that we've got going down here. Just by taking that away, I think it's giving it a little bit of more realism. And that was just by getting rid of those black lines that were surrounding that. like I say, all I'm doing now is I'm just comparing parts of my drawing to other parts, to the reference photo, things like that. So if you look on the reference photo, this area just here that sort of curves up and over the nose, it's pretty much similar brightness to what we've got down here, but on mine it's a lot darker, so that means obviously that I need to boost up that brightness. And that's what I'm doing for everything really. Which area is brighter, you know, which area is nearly as bright as this area, do I need to lighten this area, you know, and find different points on the reference photo to compare it to. And all you're going to do, you know, as long as you don't overwork it, you're just adding in more detail, more first strokes, and all that, you know, is going to give it that more realistic look. In my opinion. You know, everything I say is in my opinion, you know. I'm not an expert on this. I'm only going off, you know, what I've had success with. I'm not saying by any means it's the only way to do it. Just do what you want. If you enjoy the cartoon look, you know, go for the cartoon look. If you don't want a lot of detail, don't put a lot of detail in. At the end of the day, it's your piece of work. No one's going to tell you it's wrong. I suppose there are people that'll tell you it's wrong, but no, you don't have to listen to them. Your artwork is your artwork. You know, if you want it to look like that, absolutely fine. There's no problem with that. Yeah, as you can see, I'm sort of just dotting all over the place. I see something that I want to change, I want to lighten, and I just go there. There's no sort of system to it. Just I'm looking all over the board, seeing what I'd like to change, what's looking a bit too stark. Are there any hard lines where I want them to be soft? Just there, I just went a little bit over the line, but that'll be covered up once we varnish it as well. Now I just feel like this underneath the eye, I feel like it's it just needs what would be the word? Not quite extending, but fading out a little bit more, so bringing some of the highlights out a little bit more. I felt like it was too much of a stark line you know, and every now and again, just stand back, take another look at your work, see if there's anything else that catches your eye. So for me, this area in here is a little bit too dark, so I'm just going to want to lighten that up and blend some more fur into it. I still think we need some more of these black marks just down here. So I'll have to use some scratchboard touch-up ink just for that one. I think, do I have any in there? No, I don't have any left. So I'll have to mix up another batch of that. Just starting to add those final last little details in. I don't want to end up overworking it. So I'm just starting to put in, like I say, those final hairs. Spend too long fiddling, it may end up looking like I've, like I say, overworked it, so I don't want that. Gone a little bit too bright on this bit. So I use these Faber Castell Pip pens quite a lot as well, and these are great for just going back in and just redarkening up certain areas. So for example, where I've missed, like forgot to put in one of those, just add in a few little darker marks, and what we'll end up doing once this dries, it'll only take a couple of seconds, we'll go back in and we'll add some fur strokes into these areas just so that they don't look as sort of painted on, if that makes sense. These are great if you don't want to, let's say, just end up doing a new batch of India ink just for a small section like that. So another part that's just there, it just keeps catching my eye. So I'll end up going back in and retouching that up. So again, I'm going to take a step back and have a look at it. I'm just going to add a few more hairs into this black stripe over here, and then I might just brighten up the nose, and like I said, that might just be it. So this is also the part where I tend to not look as much at my reference photo. So my reference photo has done its job in regards to getting sort of the picture, the dimensions, the fur in the right place, things like that. And now what I look at is trying to improve on that reference photo. So is there any aspects of mine that I want to change? You know, is there any parts of mine that I want to be brighter, darker, more defined, less defined, things like that. So once I've touched up this nose, it'll end up probably being just the whiskers, and then I think we'll call it that. Like I say, I don't want to mess around too much. I wanted this video to be sort of beginner friendly as well, so I don't want to go too crazy with the detail. I wanted it to be fairly easy to follow along with. hopefully anyone that's sort of new to Scratchboard would be able to sort of complete it. Because I found when I was starting it was quite hard. There wasn't not a lot of video tutorials and things out there that you can sort of follow along with. So hopefully this will be, you know, like a real time something for people to follow along with, not just something that's been sped up and voiced over, if that makes sense. It's a lot harder to voice it over as you're drawing it. You keep forgetting that you're on camera and things like that, so it can be a little bit harder. So I hope it's been okay for you guys. And well done if you've ended up watching it all 8 episodes all the way to the end. So one final look back, and what we'll look at doing is putting in them whiskers. So for this one, I'm going to use quite a sharp blade. So I'm going to use this X-Acto knife one. If this ends up coming up too thin, I'll probably look again the thicker one out, but we'll see how it goes. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for the ones that are furthest back first. And to be honest, I'll do them a little bit lighter. I'll do them with the more blunt one. So you can see, for example, there's one originating just at the point of there, and it's just fading off going down there. So all the ones that are a little bit more faded, they're the ones we're going to do first. And the best advice I can give you is just to commit and do it. Because to be honest, the quicker you go, the straighter and more precise your line will be. You're just looking at where these points originate. So my blade actually snapped on that one, and it's caused it to become a little bit jagged. So we'll have to pretend there's 2. It's me pressing too hard, that was. And then what I like to do at the end is just go in and darken up the tips, where they've just started, just so they don't look as stark. Just lightly. Now I'm just having a final look before we sort of call this one complete. See if there's any other areas that we want to change, what we want to touch up. And to be honest, I think now at this point we're just sort of messing around with it. I don't really think there's going to be much more that we're going to change that's going to make an overall significant look any different. Like I say, I think we're just fiddling a bit now, and the problem with this is sometimes you can fiddle too much and then cause yourself issues, but sometimes there's just one more thing that you just want to change. And to be honest, sometimes I like to put it away for a couple of days, or even a week, and then bring it back out, see if there's anything else that I notice, and if there is, then you can always change it. Sometimes you think there's issues, and then if you would have just put it away for a week and didn't mess with it, you would have been alright. So I think for now we're going to leave it for there, and we'll probably call it complete. So guys, I just want to say thank you for sticking with it. Hopefully you've enjoyed seeing this one from sort of start to finish with no voiceover. It's just sort of been a live draw along session, so you can follow it. Please feel free to go watch the other ones. I've got other videos on my channel as well, so feel free to go over and have a look at them. But for now, this one's complete. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you all again in the next one.